Have you ever stopped to think about who really runs this world right off the bat? We think about billionaires, political leaders, the heads who control the world's biggest institutions, the influencers who set trends. But do they really run things, or are they just part of the same game that controls us? In this video, I'll share stories, scenes, and examples that could change how you view power, spot manipulation, and understand control and domination. Let's make this more relevant to us. Ask yourself who's in charge at home, at work, in your relationships, and most importantly, why these people have authority. Is it the money they have, their position, their achievements, their looks, their influence, or is it how they make you feel? I'm asking because understanding who runs the world begins with basics and everyday experiences, not big answers. Real power isn't just a crown, position, or status. Power is the ability to get into your mind, shape how you think, and decide how you're going to live. Often it comes from fear, or sometimes from desire, respect, or admiration, but its essence remains unchanged. What gives people power is the ability to make others feel something so strong that it paralyzes them, influences them, dominates them, because anyone who controls your feelings ultimately controls you. On a global scale, it's the same game, just a larger board. When we think of power, we usually think of something distant, gigantic structures, untouchable systems that are hard to understand. But it's nothing more than a direct reflection of human beings. It comes from the same individual dynamics that shape our relationships every day. So, the boss who makes you stay late on a day when you had something important. The person in a relationship who gets what they want from the other. The friend who manages to manipulate and make everyone think like him. Each situation is part of a larger game, but they're still just human constructs. They're just the sum of the power we exercise and endure in our daily relationships. What I mean is that power isn't a thing, but a relationship. It's everywhere, emerging from all social relationships, not just here or there. For power to exist, there needs to be a relationship of dependency, where on one side we have the dominator and on the other, the dominated. But this division isn't fixed or absolute. Who dominates and who is dominated varies according to the context, the environment, and the circumstances. For example, what might make you dominated at work doesn't mean you'll be dominated at home. It all depends on your point of submission. That's what makes you dominated. It's the fear of being single, poor, losing control, public humiliation, insignificance, and lacking meaning. Everyone has a weak spot, and those spots are the perfect levers for control. Fears, insecurities, unconscious desires. These are the doors through which power enters. And all of this is used as a trigger by those who know the rules of the game. When we broaden our perspective, we realize that this game of domination doesn't just happen in small relationships. It operates on a much larger scale. And on this big board, we can easily see that the overwhelming majority of people live in what I call the first dimension, trapped in patterns, manipulated and dominated without even realizing it. But there is a minority that operates on another level, in a second dimension. These are the so-called masters of the game, those who see further and grasp the invisible rules, who are able to perceive and skillfully exploit the vulnerabilities of those in the first dimension, using them as tools to manipulate and dominate. But what almost no one realizes is that there is something beyond this, a reality that transcends this game of domination, a space where you can free yourself from the shackles of what is imposed and live in greater harmony and alignment with life. It's what I call the third dimension, a very rare place that very few people find. And it's exactly this path that I want to invite you to. After years of collecting ideas and experiences, I created something unique. But going back to the reasoning about power, when I say that the dominators, the masters of the game, understand the rules of the game more deeply, I mean that they understand details that most people can't notice. So things that most people see as natural or consensual, like, beauty standards, social norms, and even traditions. They understand simply as social constructs that emerged over time influenced by culture, context, or the needs of each society. The fact that they question and seek to understand what's behind the facade of reality is what frees them from the first dimension, and it also allows them to manipulate and control. The majority who don't question, the majority who simply accept the reality presented to them. Do you want a practical and very simple example of this? Beauty standards. Here in Brazil, there's a clear obsession with curves and tan skin. The woman who fits these standards is often put on a pedestal. But go to Japan and the scenario changes completely. There, the lighter the skin, the better. And curves don't matter much. The nape of a woman's neck is considered one of the most sensual features, which even influences the way they dress. After all, traditional kimonos are designed to leave the nape exposed, while other parts of the body, which would be highlighted here in Brazil, are practically ignored there. And it's not like someone decided in a meeting room that one standard would be better than the other. These standards arise from cultural contexts, histories, ethnic characteristics, and preferences that have evolved over time. But once established, they create silent rules. What you should value, what you should aspire to be, what you should fear. And more than that, these rules also end up determining the dynamics of power. But why the dynamics of power? Imagine a woman who fits perfectly into a dominant beauty standard. She can use this advantage as a tool of control in a relationship. Because on the other hand, we might find a man who is insecure, constantly needing validation, who seeks in this woman a way to assert himself socially. He thinks being with her boosts his status and self-worth. In this case, who actually has control? And before we answer that, it's important to realize that dependency is the trigger that gives away power.
Someone once told me that in every relationship, the power lies with the one who cares less. And they were right.
So, while the man depends on the validation that a woman's presence brings, she, by understanding this dynamic of the game, can use him to get whatever she wants. Make him give himself completely to her to become totally submissive. She understands that her position makes her less dependent on him because she knows there are many others willing to fill the same role as this man. And that's just a crude and very basic example of how seemingly innocent conventions can turn into tools of power. Because unlike common belief, power comes not just from force, but from exploiting the overlooked details of the social game. And it's clear that these dynamics go far beyond beauty standards or romantic relationships. They're everywhere, at your job, in politics, in the economy, everything. And each of these dynamics, no matter how small they seem, is a piece of a much bigger game. What I want you to realize is that when we consider who runs the world, we're really trying to understand how all relationships fit together as a whole. Let me bring another example from a completely different environment, but one that is certainly very illustrative for us to understand power dynamics. Prison. I've already made a video about the Shawshank Redemption that turned out interesting. Check it out if you're interested. This time, I'm going to use a much less popular scene, but one that really illustrates the idea I want to explore. It's a scene from the Italian series Gomorrah about the local mafia. It's a violent series about power games, manipulation, and alliances, strategies that decide who lives, dies, and controls the game. And in this particular scene, we see the boss of one of the biggest local mafias being arrested. He arrives at the prison, and even there, a place that should symbolize the total loss of power, he is still respected, or rather, feared, not just by the inmates, but also by the guards themselves. Everyone knows who he is outside those walls, a giant, dangerous figure with influence that goes far beyond the bars, and that respect or fear follows him into the prison. The result? He lives with comforts and privileges that shouldn't exist there. He's not just another inmate, he's still the boss, even within the prison walls. He has a cell phone to communicate and control everything that happens outside. But suddenly, everything changes. They replace the prison warden, and this new warden, upon arrival, makes it clear that things are going to be very different. He looks at the mafia boss and practically declares war.
The policy around here used to be different, but with me, things are going to be strict. No privileges.
He limits the mobster, removes his perks, and tries to treat him like the other inmates. For a moment, it even seems like he's in control.
Isolation will help him better understand how to behave.
But after a while, the prison starts to descend into chaos. Some guards stay loyal to the mobster, driven by bribes or promised protection. Many inmates who support the mobster also begin to revolt. However, the chief guard refuses to negotiate. He wants to show that the system works and that he's the one in charge. But there comes a moment when the mobster manages to influence everyone in the prison, including those from rival mafias. He manages to get absolutely all the inmates to join the protest, and then the prison turns into absolute chaos. And at that moment, the chief of the guards realizes either he gives in or he loses control completely, and then he gives in. The perks return, the mobster gets his privileges back, and order, interestingly, is restored, but under the mobster's terms. And here's the point. Who was really in charge of all that? Was it the chief of the guards with his position and formal authority? Or was it the mobster who had the respect and fear of everyone around him? The scene makes this very clear. The chief of the guards did have his position. He could give orders and set the rules, but the mobster had something much more powerful, the ability to instill fear, to manipulate, to make people believe he was still in control, even while in prison. So when we talk about power, forget the facades, forget the positions, the titles, the ranks, or the faces that seem to be in charge. The one who can control the emotions, fears, and desires of those around him is the one who truly holds the power.
Being close to power makes some believe they're in control. I put an end to that kind of thinking before it even started.
Now, when we move away from this prison example and look at the bigger picture, who would be the powerful ones? Today, we live in a world where powers are increasingly omnipresent and invisible. But despite the changes, the different scenarios, the new institutions and technologies, in the end, the rules and dynamics of the game remain the same. Consider politics, for instance. We often view rulers as central figures of power, but do they truly control the game?
This is the presidency. How high can a politician go?
The real power isn't here. It's beyond here. It's above this.
As with the prison chief example, holding a political position alone doesn't ensure real power. Politicians may just be puppets for those who truly hold power. Campaign financiers, policymakers, and money controllers, and who are often hidden behind the scenes. These are the powers exercised behind the visible powers. And when we look at the way the system is set up and structured, we realize how money is something central and makes everything go round. It influences institutions, policies, and even people's wants and needs.
You don't question it when the money comes in.
And who controls the money? Banks, large financial institutions, giant corporations. They're the ones who keep the economy running, who set the pace of things. As the founder of a major financial family once said, "Give me control over a nation's currency issuance and I care not who makes its laws." After all, real power lies in controlling the engine of the system, money, because the laws, or the rulers who are supposed to regulate it, are controlled. The consequence of that? However, saying those with money are in charge oversimplifies the issue. It's clear that money is central in the system we live in, but we can't lose sight of the fact that it's just a tool, just like there are several others, such as violence, for example. That's what makes organized crime also stand out in this game, spreading terror and controlling territories, lives, and even local politics.
For those of us who rise to the top of the food chain, there can be no mercy. There is only one rule. Hunt. Hunt or be hunted. We do not submit to terror. We create terror.
Power takes hold through our vulnerabilities, using money, fear, and psychological control to assert itself. Once established, the system shapes new vulnerabilities, fears, and desires. It shapes how we think, creating a cycle that reinforces its dominance. We fear stepping out of line or breaking the pattern.
The main fear people have is humiliation. Public. Okay.
And so, society, with its beliefs and daily concerns, unconsciously ends up supporting the same system it claims to hate so much. Ultimately, it's clear, money doesn't sustain the system. The real driving force is people. The system depends on them. Without their cooperation, the gears don't turn. Without them, there is no domination. and those in power know this very well.
Let's pretend this grain is a very small ant. Did it hurt? What about now? If we let one ant challenge us, then all of them will start causing problems. These little ants outnumber us. If they start realizing it, our easy life is over.
The thoughts of the governed must be controlled. That's why propaganda and spectacle, mass control, are the most powerful tools in the arsenal of power. Controlling what people think and fear is essential for the system to stay standing. That's why distractions have become one of the greatest tools of power. Today, brute force is no longer so necessary. It's enough to keep people busy, entertained, believing they have some power, that their opinions matter, that hatred, a political conviction, or belief in a grand conspiracy can really change everything. People believe that simply rejecting the path of the majority means seeing beyond the obvious. But in the end, the reality is that often they remain trapped in the same game, just playing on the opposite side.
Convincing someone to do what I want is satisfying, but purposely failing to persuade them is even better, like a do not enter sign daring you to go in.
We are seduced by the idea that challenging what is forbidden in itself is a form of freedom or power. The illusion that thinking differently puts you in a position of power is dangerous, because isolated knowledge does nothing. True power requires the wisdom to act within a system that has already been designed to absorb and neutralize any threat to its dominance.
Knowledge is power.
Arrest him. Cut his throat. Wait. I changed my mind. Let him go. Power is power.
This is where many fail, confusing knowledge with power, as if simply seeing beyond could change anything in a world where the game is already well established. And as long as we keep seeing the world as a battle between us and them, between the evil powerful and the good people, we'll never really understand how this power dynamic works. This simple good versus evil view just reinforces the same game. We sometimes forget that we're all just human beings, each with our own reality and circumstances, who can show their worst when provoked. As Abraham Lincoln said, if you want to test a man's character, give him power. We tend to think that all politicians are corrupt and crooked, but power by itself doesn't create corruption. It only exposes who the person already is. What I mean is that the desire that drives a corrupt politician may not be so different from the selfish desires that drive you. It's just appearing on a larger, more visible stage.
We claim to serve you, but really we serve ourselves. And why? Because we are driven by our own desire to be re-elected. Our need to stay in power overshadows our duty to govern.
The desire to stay in power can be like your desire for more money or for status. Maybe the difference is that you've never reached your breaking point of corruption, that point where extreme circumstances test your moral limits and reveal who you really are. And I'm not saying that we're all corrupt, nor am I trying to normalize corruption. I'm just trying to show that the nature of power is, above all, a reflection of the human condition. We all have the potential for both good and evil. Recognizing our shadow, our ability for selfish and destructive acts as well as altruistic and noble ones, prevents us from making the same mistakes we often judge in others. It's like that guy who goes around all proud, saying he's faithful to his wife, but he's fat, poor, ugly, annoying, and completely unwanted by anyone else. And even so, he goes around criticizing rich and famous people who cheated, saying how they're bad people. I would never do that. But would he truly never do it? Or has he just never faced the right circumstances to test him? And that goes for all of us, no matter how much we try to separate ourselves from others, pointing fingers and saying, they're corrupt, they're bad. I'm not like that. The truth, often uncomfortable, is that what we see in the world is just a reflection of human nature. I don't believe that human nature is inherently corrupt or evil. But where there are power relations, there are more triggers to bring out the worst. Where there is power, there is greater temptation, and few are able to resist it. Meanwhile, those below point fingers create distance and convince themselves that they are led by people of a completely different nature. But maybe that's exactly why the system works so well. It needs you to see it as something separate, distant, outside your reality. You stay unaware of what drives it, making you an ideal tool for those who know the game.
For too long, we have been lying to you. Work hard, play by the rules. You aren't guaranteed success. Your children will not have a better life than you did. 10 million of you can't even get a job, even though you desperately want one. We've been crippled by Social Security, Medicare by welfare, by entitlements, and that is the root of the problem. Entitlements. Let me be clear. You were entitled to nothing. You are entitled to nothing.
The truth is, you have no guaranteed rights. Acknowledging this isn't defeat, it's liberation. Recognizing that even established powers are temporary and depend on various factors. And therefore, the only real power you can exercise is over yourself. That's why I believe that someone who controls others may be powerful, but someone who masters himself is even more powerful.
Hey, let me give you some legal advice. Shut up.